What's up, everyone? Welcome back to A Line of the Stars. I'm Jordan, and we're back today with another episode of the Slave One build series and Fett's Vet. Now, it is really cool to kind of go back, and now this model's been done for a little bit at the time of voiceover, but it is really cool to kind of go back and look at the sub-assemblies that we did a month ago. So, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Now, what we're doing here in this very first section is assembling our engine pylons. Now, what's interesting about this is the first time in any model that I've built where it's actually designed to have parts that move. Now, obviously in Partworks, stuff like that, they're like that's a thing that like is just a thing. But in plastic scale models, I haven't seen that yet. And so I was a little weirded out with going into building this. So let's go ahead and get started on our first section, shall we? So as we go into assembling our pylon supports, I had to kind of figure out what I was doing for the second side on the first side, as we all know how that goes with building models. The first side went together okay, the second side went together much easier, much better. And what I had done here is that what you don't see is on that raised section right here, and basically there's where that's fitting into place, there is a slightly raised section where that sits. And my thought and approach is going to be get that sitting into its proper spot and then basically come through and glue from behind and get that part secured into place. And then once I have the first like piece in place, then I can kind of sandwich the other one over the top of it, glue it like we would any other normal model, and then, go ahead and move on. And so figuring this part out was a little interesting. I haven't, like I said, experienced a whole lot of different like styles of building models and stuff like that. So this was definitely a learning experience for me. Now, as we come over here to the other side, what I decided to do was obviously get glue onto my lug points along the edges where, everything all connects up. But, what we have here is also a point where I'm trying to figure out how to replicate what I had done on the other side with the gluing to the main body of the ship. And so what I did is around that raised section is put a little bead of glue just along the lip where it's going to connect up. I wish that I had done a better job of doing these assemblies. And as you can see there at the very end, there's a little bit of a gap. And what's funny is I really did nothing to correct that. I did use some clamps over time to try to correct it later, but it wasn't like a whole lot of work. I didn't do any putty work. I was running out of time. So, it was one of those things where, as we get closer to the end of the build, I was just starting to sacrifice and things that I learned, of course. And so, um, and what's funny is like I assembled right here the part that I'm putting in place. There's these two lug mounting points here. For whatever reason, when I had built the pylons in the previous episode, I I just didn't put this piece on. I don't know why. So that one wound up going in there. I was like, why does this one look different? I do remember that, like when I was going to go build, I'm like, why does this look different? And then I had a brief panic moment when I couldn't find the part immediately. It was sitting just floating around on the bottom of the main box for the model, which is not something that I normally do. So we've got the first part here, once again, getting ready to be assembled. And I'm trying to show a little bit better of a like angle here, and you can kind of make out that little ridge section that sits up where it sits into place. It was a little fiddly, I do have to say, like getting this part put in and getting the two parts sandwiched. But once in place, this system worked really, really well. The pylons pivot nicely; they move around nicely. So yeah, it's a real quick, simple, easy little assembly to put in place once you figured out what you were doing. And that was the thing. Like that's the thing that I'm like really learning right now is figure out what you're doing so that if you have multiple assemblies, the rest of them go much easier. So we're assembling the rear ramp here, and this is, in hindsight, one of my regrets. I really do wish that I had taken the time to, what's the best way of putting it? When I was engineering the battery pack, in the previous episode, what's funny is like I've kind of skipped around here through editing process. We hadn't assembled the cockpit with the battery section yet in this part here. I really wish that I had done that in the lower section down here. There's an opportunity for a door, and you can open the door and like just pull the battery in and out, and then I could probably have built the cockpit. It wasn't that difficult. I figured out how to do that now with doing the perfect grade Falcon. Like I could have probably pulled it off, and maybe the model would have placed a little higher. But once again, like I said, the placing at this point, I got to get that out of my head. I really do. I need to build models for my own satisfaction, as my friend Ian, Pit Stain Hobbies, is so kindly, politely reminded me of. Get lost in the competition a little bit, and kind of goes back to my personality a little bit. I am a little bit competitive, so. But in hindsight, if I had done the cockpit with this model, I might have placed a little bit higher than I did. But that being said, however, I have definitely like given some thought. Like I really need to plan out my lighting for these models. Obviously, I wasn't planning on lighting this one, but it was one of those things where like when we plan for it, we need to plan for it. Like actually do the work beforehand so that we know exactly what we're doing. And I'm doing that now with the Razorcrest and my other models. So um, this assembly is fairly simple. There was just a little ridge and a couple of caps that sit over the edges of the post there. And the door just simply just swivels open and closed. It's a very simple, easy setup. And, like I said, regrets were had. The 9-volt does fit down in there. And I may go through in one of these dockyard streams here in the coming future, go ahead and mod this so that we can go ahead and have that down there with the battery eliminator, because I'm not going to be using the battery with it anymore. The battery was only going to be used in the competition. So the radar dish, I don't even really know if it's a radar dish. I think it has weapons on it. And for someone who knows everything about Star Wars, it's a little weird that I don't know that. But it does look like a radar dish, and so that's what I'm calling it. But these are little weapons, and I did treat them as guns when I painted them. I painted them silver, and then I did some burnishing on the very end to give the impression that there's been some carbon scoring just from the heat. Both of these went together really easily. It's a very simple assembly. But one was very satisfying putting on. Like once I finally got this assembled and like put it together, well, we will see that in the next episode for the full assembly. It just looks so good. And the weathering that I wound up doing on it also turned out really good, if I'm being real. So yeah, really satisfying process for this one. Another quick little sub-assembly, just putting Han and some carbonite. Well, assembling Han and carbonite is what I say. Really, it's just putting his carbonite slab onto the holder, and it's kind of a cool little effect where they try to make it look like it's a floating, gurney thing that they were using to transport him. So I just very simply used some CA glue around the outside to secure it in place. Very thin bead. At this point, this super glue has been around for a minute. And so, needless to say, I was starting to run into some issues with getting the glue to flow. And so, yeah, it was definitely, it was interesting to say the least. But, getting him in here was kind of like another one of my regrets. If I had been thinking, I would have used this. I would have created like a little push control and used this as the main power switch. And I never weathered Han. I never did anything to do anything other than the silver on there. And although for as good as this looks right here, it could have looked better. But hey, it is what it is. Now we're assembling the base here, and I did take footage of painting it. Unfortunately, I in the ensuing months and all the in the month and all the recording, that I've done since then. And I purge files constantly. Like, you don't keep your originals around for very long. So, yeah, basically, I don't have image of it painting, but I did wind up using the AK Extreme Metals, the white aluminum, the same one that I use for the Razorcrest, and I use that as the base. This is actually a really nice base. I like the way they designed it. I like the way that the model fits in there. It looks really good, but once again, one of the things that I learned at Wonderfest this year is that the entire model matters. Everything matters. The base matters. All of it matters, right? And so the whole idea here is that you complete the model. And a couple things that I didn't do here on the inside of these posts here, I didn't sand down like any of the original casting points. You can definitely tell that I had, you know, just kind of skipped over that part. Once again, I think the quality of this model stood out despite some of its flaws, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that it did as well as it did. So, once again, learning. And if you're going to take a model to Wonderfest, make sure you spend time on the entire model, including the base. I could have done more here. I could have weathered up the base. I could have done more to just enhance it. Once again, more time, more preparation, more planning is going to go into our models that we bring next year, and really all of our models. Once again, don't build a model for competition. Build a model for your satisfaction. And if you want to bring it to competition, be prepared for whatever results you're going to get. So yeah, that's kind of some of the things that I learned along the way. And in the next episode, my friends, the very last episode, the grand finale, we are going to be putting it all together. And man, I cannot wait, to show you guys some really up close and detailed shots of this model. It is super satisfying. All right. So the results, I really, once again, this is just a dub over. I'm voiceovering on this part here. But for this model, all of the sub assemblies went together really, really well. I didn't have any issues with getting any of these parts put together. It for an MPC model, I got to say that this model, because I've built another one, that thing is a flash nightmare. That's all I got to say about that. But this model went together really, really well. And I'm really pleased with how all the sub-assemblies went together. So in the next one, it is going to be the grand finale, my friends. The Fett's Vet is coming to a close, and I can't wait, like I said, to show you what it's going to look like. So we're going to be doing our complete assembly and moving on to full-time Razorcrest build. So that's what I got for you today, my friends, and I just want to say thank you. I know that there was a million things you all could have done today. Instead, you spent a couple minutes with me watching me build a model, which I think is pretty damn cool. If you guys have any questions or comments, tips, tricks, please leave them down below. If you'd like to support the channel, please like and subscribe. And my friends, until we see each other again, I hope you all have a wonderful day in this beautiful world, wherever you happen to be. And just remember, my friends, that this is the way.